This was the third round of the September Rising Star tournament here in Mesa, Arizona, and I played D4. My opponent was around a 1400. I was also a 1400, and here we go into the mainline Jabava, except my opponent goes for the move G6. He's going for a Pirk setup, and I play this opening all the time online. The best move here is bishop to e3, but I play my bishop out to f4, and he plays his bishop up to g7. So I go for this attack with confidence. I've never done this over the board, and I suppose I've just been afraid of it because I know that my opponent will have a lot more time. And you can see here, he's already thinking, because this move, e5, is not a common one. It is a mistake, and if he plays his knight to h5 in this position, he's able to attack my defender of that pawn and also release his bishop attacking the e5 pawn, along with his pawn already on d6. There I would have played my bishop back to c1, or maybe I would have brought my queen out to defend the bishop. Both ways are okay with playing. However, my opponent did not find knight h5, a very difficult move to find, and he instead played his knight to g4, a move I never see. And I wasn't sure how to go about this. It was unusual, it was interesting, but I knew that it wasn't correct. Now I just had to figure out, why was it not correct? There are several good moves in this position. The first being knight f3, just defending the pawn in the center. The pawn is attacked 3 times. It's only defended twice. So really I need to defend that pawn. So I was really considering knight f3 here. I didn't know if it was best though. I wasn't sure if I should take that pawn on d6. The second best move was queen to e2, just defending the pawn. And the third best was the move that I ultimately went for, which was e captures d6. My opponent promptly takes that pawn back with c takes d6. And here I was looking for the most active moves. What squares do I want my pieces on? And I saw I can go bishop b5. And the reason I played bishop b5 was because it's very difficult for him to defend this. If he goes knight to d7, he blocks his defense of the g4 knight. If he goes bishop to d7, then he is not able to defend that knight because his bishop will be pinned. And so he has to play knight to c6, which my opponent did find fairly promptly. But it's always good to just make threats in a game of chess. Continue making threats. So my bishop's pinning his knight. Now is there any way for me to attack that pinned piece? I thought about the move queen to f3, attacking c6, but that didn't work because that hung the d4 pawn in the middle of the board. And so here I really needed to find the move h3, just kicking his knight away. If you've got a piece in your half of the board, often it's good to just give it a little kick. But the game is in a completely even state here. I don't really have anything. I just need to develop my pieces. Knight f3 would be the best move. However, I get very ambitious and I decide to push d5, attacking the pinned piece with a pawn. On the surface, it looks really good, but it's much better to just develop. My opponent was probably starting to stress here because he's got a piece in danger. It's attacked and he can't get away from it. So a really helpful way for you guys when you're doing these games to think. There's actually 5 things you can sort of think of when you're in a situation like this. Number 1, you're in danger. Can you kill the piece attacking you? And he can't kill the d5 pawn. So no, he can't. Number 2, can you run away from it? No, you can't because your knight is pinned. You can't get away from the d5 pawn. Number 3, can you block? No, you can't put another piece in between the d5 and the c6 square. So you can't block this one. Number 4, can you attack a piece of greater value? Well, he could move his knight to e3, and if I took his knight on c6, then he'd take my queen, but obviously that would be silly because I could just recapture his knight on e3 for free. So no, he can't attack a piece of greater value. But there is a fifth thing that you can think about, and that is, can you create a bigger threat? And that's exactly what my opponent found with his next move, queen b6, threatening checkmate on f2. I have quite a long think here, 3 or 4 minutes on my clock, and I play the move queen e2, the top move, defending the f2 square, defending my bishop on b5, and also lining my queen up against his king. So now some spicy stuff is going to start happening. I was looking at all kinds of sacrifices and wildness. And this is exactly why you watch this channel. You want to see the crazy stuff. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to see me play good, solid chess and positional. I don't know. But if you do go for good, crazy stuff, you do need to calculate it a lot. And yes, I did calculate this, but I missed one of his moves that he could play in response. So here in this position, my opponent played his pawn up to a6, kicking my bishop. And really what I need to do here is just capture his knight. And then he'll take my knight on c3 with check. I'll capture back his bishop on c3, and then he'll take my bishop on b5. This is the way that you should play. And the position, he's got about a point advantage, but I decided to go for something more crazy. Bishop takes d6 with the threat of queen e7 checkmate. I thought it looked extremely exciting, and I spent a long time here calculating. I think what I can learn from this is my calculation skills are just not very good, because if I look at the engine here, the engine has multiple ways for my opponent to respond. He could simply take my knight on c3 with check. I would recapture, b takes c3, and then he could capture my bishop on b5 for free because it's no longer defended. And I no longer would be able to take the pawn on e7 because he would still have that knight on c6 defending it, and it's no longer pinned. So that would be one way for my opponent to deal with this. The other way would be just short castle. And then I have two pieces in danger, and he's got more activity. He's doing very well. This game was about to get extremely ugly. In this position, virtually everything is losing for me. I'm down about 5 points according to the engine, but I took his knight on c6 with my bishop. It was essentially the same taking with the d-pawn, but taking with the d-pawn would have kept my bishop on b5, not allowing his queen to infiltrate on b2. And here my opponent started considering going in for the b2 pawn, threatening everything. The rook on a1 with check. So stuff was looking very, very risky for me. My opponent knew all this. He just plays slowly, capturing on d6. And here my bishop's still in danger. I'm hoping that I can withdraw it to a safer square, but I also know that my b2 pawn is hanging. Here the engine likes the move knight a4, hitting the queen. The queen can't take the bishop, but the queen can just step out of my knight's threat by going to a5 with check. Then I could go queen d2, and then they could just trade queens and win my bishop. That would be probably one of the simplest ways to play, but I instead do something stupid. I just try to save my minor piece, allowing the infiltration of queen takes b2, which was not the way to play this. I was being too materialistic. I play my bishop back to a4. Here my position starts to crumble like the Roman Empire did many years ago. He takes on b2, hitting my rook on a1. His bishop on g7 is also eyeing my knight on c3. So he's threatening to take that multiple ways. Everything is ugly. If I move my rook to b1, which is the most sort of instinctive move immediately because it hits the queen, he just takes on c3 with his queen, and I'm getting absolutely cooked. The best move by the engine is rook d1, and then he'd still take on c3 with check, and I have to go queen d2, and then the engine likes b5, but he could just trade off queens and I'm done. So I tried my best effort here to keep my pieces on, and my best effort failed, but I played the move knight back to d1. I thought I can hold the c3 checking square with my knight, and I have to give him my rook. So now he's up a rook here, and I'm feeling the pressure. Although rook d1 was the best engine move, knight d1 was the second best. So props to me. I mean, finding a resourceful defense in the heat of battle, not too shabby. I tried to solidify my position by pulling my bishop back to b3, holding both of those pawns, and trying to get all my pieces sort of in the fight together. Now, my bishop was already developed. Maybe just giving a pawn would have been better and developing knight to f3 or something. But here he just prioritizes development. He goes bishop d7 with the threat of bringing a rook to e8, which would pin the queen to my king, losing my queen. In most situations, I would have knight e3, but in this situation, my knight's pinned to my king as well. So my opponent's kind of crushing me with everything. It was in this moment, when all other hope had faded, that Blunderman, son of the king, took up his father's sword and went into battle. I played my king to d2. I had to get out of that pin, and putting my king on f1 was just suicide, because he could attack my queen and then checkmate me on d1 with his queen taking my knight. So yeah, this move seemed best. And here he attacks me with his bishop on h6. My king is now on the run, lads. I can't go back to where I came from, because rook e8 gives him my queen. So here my king has to go further into battle. He marches forwards. I play king d3. Relentless. And here I smile, because I was realizing what was about to happen. Check after check. He goes bishop to f5, hitting my king again. I can't even go back to the square I was on. I have to keep venturing forwards. The dark squares in front of me, all around me, are covered by his queen, by his bishop. So I have to find the only light square in front of me here. King jumps onto the c4 square. He plays pawn to b5, attacking my king again. I only have one square here. King to b4. Pawn to a5 check. If I go back to a3, while he's got bishop c1 check, my only move would be knight b2, and then bishop or queen takes b2 as checkmate. I had to go forward into battle. I take the pawn on b5. Bishop comes back to d7, checking me again. If I go forwards onto b6, I was terrified of queen d4 check, so I go back to the c4 square. At this point, I think my opponent's just having fun. He checks me with knight to e5, and I can't go onto any of the dark squares. They're all covered. I can't go onto any of the light squares. They're all covered. So I have to give him my queen here. Queen takes e5. Here he recaptures with his pawn. I tried to stop his queen's scope by playing c3, hoping that I can maybe run my king back around, but I know the end is coming. He plays rook fb8, just getting his pieces better situated, about to give the final blow. I try to run for the hills, but the hills have spies on every single one of them. King e3 is quickly threatened with the move bishop to b5. Here I can block with my bishop, but why block with the bishop when I can move my king? King to e4. Here he brings his nasty queen out of the cave that it was hiding in on a1 and checks me on b1. I take the pawn on e5 with defiance, trying to get rid of anything I can. Rook comes to e8 check. My king goes to d6. His bishop comes back to f8 check. King c7. Really, I'm walking around in the wrong part of town here. I think the end is truly over now. his rook seals in the coffin with rook a b8. Whatever I do, the next move is going to be checkmate, so I spitefully try to attack his queen on b1 by playing bishop c2, but he plays rook e to c8, checkmate. Well played, sir. The engine says that I played with a 59% accuracy, my opponent with an 83.5. Thanks so much for watching this video. I just want you to know that the next tournament I played was one of my greatest, and those videos will be coming out soon on the channel. Thanks for watching. See you lads soon.